Welcome to the Inside Slant Podcast, brought to you by JayhawkSlant.com. Here's the staff from Jayhawk Slant, the online leader in KU coverage since 1999.
Hey everybody, this is Randy Withers. Welcome into another edition of the Inside Slant podcast from JayhawkSlant.com, and get ready for one of our famous football-only editions of the Slant. We are going to talk about the Kansas football Jayhawks. We're going to dig into recruiting. We're going to update you on what Lance Leipold and his staff have been up to. We're also going to talk with one of our best guests, Matt Gildersleeve, KU football's director of sports performance. Coach Sleeve, like I say, is one of our best year in, year out, and he has become really a regular feature for each year about this time during the summer. But before we get into all that, I got to bring in our man on the Kansas football beat, the publisher of Jayhawk Slant, my friend John Kirby. JK, how you doing today?
Randy, I'm doing well. We're getting ready to hit that time here that it drives me up a wall because now you got the recruiting over. Coaches are all getting out of town, and you get your Big 12 media days. And well, I'll tell you, maybe it's I've been doing this for too long, but the Big 12 media days, I mean, they're cool and all, but I mean, boy, there's just not a lot said. Everybody is pretty guarded and pretty careful of what they say, and hey, everything's rocking and rolling in the program, and summer's going great. You kind of know what's going to be said, so we're kind of getting into those dog days here before fall camp, where things slow down. But hey, we got July 4th coming up. You got any plans?
My plans are to try to make sure that I don't lose any fingers first off. A lot of we in our neighborhood, there are going to be a lot of people blowing stuff up, just like there is every year. We watch everybody else and try to keep the dogs calm. Hugo gets a little wired up sometimes. He doesn't necessarily like the big noises. We were out in the backyard the other night, and this was totally unlike him. Somebody set off something a few streets away, and normally he would kind of squat down and look around, and he went running towards where he thought it was coming from and kind of barked at it. And I was like, who are you and what have you done with my other dog? This makes no sense.
Yeah, it's funny how they're all different. Yeah, it's funny how the dogs are all different. We had a little one who passed away about a year and a half ago, and boy, she hated the fireworks. And then we had a black lab. He didn't even know they're going off. And then we now have Wit, who is our little chocolate lab, and I mean he sleeps through every thunderstorm, and he doesn't even bat an eye. So I mean, hopefully July 4th will be good. Yeah, we do the same thing. We got a pretty tight group of people on the street that all get together, and we're going to do that again. So yeah, it should be fun.
I hope everybody listening gets a chance to spend some time, friends, family, at least relax a little bit, maybe enjoy some World Cup, obviously, which has just been unbelievable. I never thought that I would be as into soccer as I've been, but that is way off the subject of where we are going to go today. Like we said, football only edition of the Slant. And Kirby, before we started recording, you were talking about this current recruiting class, and you said something that I thought was really interesting. You described it as, quote, quietly, a very solid class. Now that's a new one from you. Can you expand on that a little bit? Tell the listeners how you feel about what Coach Leipold and this staff have done to this point.
Yeah, really what I meant is the class was kind of scattered through time. I mean, Gonzalez, the offensive lineman from California, was the first to commit, and they kind of came in over time, and they got done early. They really didn't have to get even much past really the first weekend of June before they were pretty much wrapped up. So, and it was a smaller class, and we'll get into that. But when you look at the Big 12, they definitely have one of the smaller high school classes, and there's reasons for that. I mean, they project and they look down the roster and they think, who is leaving. What other spots could open up? How many high school guys do you take? How many do you leave open for the portal? And everybody's philosophies are different on that, right? So, this class, the news kind of just came in over time. And then when you look back at it, I put a post up on the message board last night that, right now KU's got the fifth ranked recruiting class in the Big 12 with one of the lower amount of commitments of
That says
anybody.
something when you have that few players and you're in the top half of the conference.
Well, points help rack up, where you go. But, and then, there were obviously a couple comments that were like, hey, is being fifth in the Big 12 something to be proud about because, the Big 12's slip? Well, yeah, it does. It does mean something because those are the guys you're playing. Right. I mean, those are the guys you're seeing on the field and playing all the
Of
time.
course.
So if your recruiting class is ranked, which we all know how that goes, some kids pan out, some don't, some hit the portal after 1 year, but it was a little smaller class. They got the quarterback they wanted, which was huge. They really only went after two quarterbacks. They ended up taking a few more guys than I expected because I think the number they were looking at was somewhere between possibly 12 and 14. So it's very rare that you see Lance Leipold and the staff vary or deviate that far from their plan. So I thought that was interesting. And I think what they do is they built it in where they said, hey, we can afford to pad a couple more here and there because listen, Randy, the one thing we don't know about, we have no idea who's going in that portal and who's going to stay. So I'm
No
sure
doubt.
they looked at it the same way and said, you know what, we got a chance to get a couple of these receivers. We got a chance to get an extra lineman. Let's take them, right? And let's just see how things play out. So, they had 17 total. Then they lost one to North Carolina, so they're at 16 right now. And overall, I think they filled a lot of the class needs. And the key is, I think they got a lot of the guys they wanted early. So, that's always been a key indicator to me.
This is our first episode since this recruiting class was essentially wrapped up, really. I'd love to break this group down, kind of going from one side of the ball to the other. I'm going to give you the mic and let you share your thoughts. First off, on the offense, what do you like?
Well, got to start with quarterback. Chance Thomas from California, who, by the way, just, he announced he's transferring to Bishop Gorman. I just wrote a story on him last week. That's
Oh,
one of the top high school football programs in America. So, I mean,
no doubt.
we're going to get a chance to watch Chance Thomas on TV because
Yes, we will.
they are televised and it's he says he's looking forward to the move and he's already made it and transitioning over. But I mean, he was one of the guys. I mean, it was Dane Weber or Chance Thomas. Those were the two quarterbacks that they really put all their time in, and they ended up getting Thomas, who chose Kansas over Auburn and Utah. So that was a good get right there.
Hmm.
Moving to running back, they were only taking one. They had several guys on the board, and Trey Stewart from Arkansas committed to them early. I think he said, "Hey, I think there was a several positions where guys went. They knew there was only going to be one or two spots in their positions, Randy." And I think some of these guys jumped on it and took the spots because, there's a little bit of pressure like, hey, I like KU, but I got some other schools going after me. And then you start realizing KU's only got one spot left. And I think they got some kids because they're like, I want to get in on KU while I can. And
Hmm.
Trey Stewart jumped in. I mean, he had offers from Arkansas and Ole Miss, and he had an early offer from Oklahoma. So, he jumped in. And when he did, it shut down the running backs. They got on the horn and called a bunch of guys and said, hey, we're canceling your visit. We got our running back. Moving over to tight end, Mason Oglesby, four-star guy, one of the two four-stars in the class from Indiana. I mean, he chose KU over Ohio State and Indiana. And people say, come
Which
on.
is insane.
Well,
Oh my gosh.
people are like, did Ohio State really want him? Absolutely, they did. I mean,
Hmm.
Ryan Day made an in-home visit in the spring to his house. Okay,
We
he
talked about
does.
that the last time. That didn't happen.
No,
I mean,
well,
that.
if it does, but it means that they want you. Okay,
Oh, and
so
it means that they're going to get you too. That's
well,
typically the closer right there.
well, Ryan Day doesn't get on a plane and fly to your house for the heck of it. I mean, they want you.
Exactly.
And then obviously Indiana wanted him, but the problem
Hmm.
with Indiana was they returned like three or four of their top tight ends who were all underclassmen. I think Oglesby just went, you know what? I'm going to go to Kansas. I know he really liked the plan Kotelnicki put out in front of him. So, that was a big get. And then Luke Gazaniga from tight end from California, he jumped in. So they took two tight ends. And then wide receiver is probably one of the most interesting positions for me of the entire class because I know the plan was, hey, they're going to take one wide receiver, and if they can get Deng Tong, they would take two. Well, Deng Tong jumped in early, so I think they said, "All right, we're gonna take one more," and then things got crazy because there was one visit weekend where they had Tavares Powell, Jay Williams, and Malik Brown all all on the same visit, and really technically on the board, there's one spot left, and within about a 48-hour span, all three of them wanted to be Jayhawks. And that's where they made the adjustment, Randy, as they came in and said, you know what? Let's take them all. Which again, I go back to what I said a little bit ago. That's it surprises me a little bit because one thing they don't do, man, they are precise and organized on those numbers on what they want to take. But I think they just looked up and said, "We're you know what? Let's take them all. We think they're all good players. They all want to be Jayhawks. Let's do it." So they ended up taking four receivers when I thought the number was two. And then another area, I'll move over to offensive line. Another area they took another spot that I didn't think they would. They were going to take two offensive linemen. They got Derek Gonzalez from California. He was the first guy to commit in the class. They got Nick Vacrumba from Indiana, who was an interesting deal. I think he knew there was one spot left. He and his dad flew in to Kansas City, drove to Lawrence, went and looked at campus, drove around, looked at the facilities, but they couldn't meet with a coach
Exactly.
because it was a dead period. All right. But they wanted to come in and get a feel. They came back and committed taking that what was supposed to be the last spot, and he was committed before he even took his official visit. And then a guy they really liked, Richie Dexter from Arizona, he was supposed to visit Oklahoma State and KU. He ends up calling him before his official visit and says, "Hey, I'm canceling my Oklahoma State visit. I want to commit." And I think they adjusted the board and said, "Man, this is a big kid who's athletic, who's got a big upside. We know we're only going to take two, but you know what? We're not going to pass on Richie Dexter." So they took him, and the numbers were adjusted. And I like Richie Dexter. I know this Huffman, who's with On Three. He's one of our national analysts on the West Coast. They really liked him, so he saw him in camp. So and then moving over to defense, they took one defensive end and they got a good one. C.J. Johnson from Minnesota, 4-star, one of the two 4-star recruits in the class. He had a lot going on. I mean, he could have gone to a lot of different places. And then they took one inside guy, and that's going to end up being Quentin Dorsey. Right now, he's about 245 pounds, but we always joke that once he gets a few cheeseburgers in him and sitting with Matt Gildersleeve, he'll be 270, 275 pounds before he knows it. And again, our West Coast analysts who are well respected and been around a long time, they love his upside. So right there, you had one D in, you had one D tackle. Jumping down to the linebackers, they took two. Elliott Neff from Michigan. I think Simpson did a great job with him, recruiting him, and I think he was pretty much locked in before his official visit. And then they got Jamarquis Hudson, a linebacker out of Port Arthur, Texas, who had Houston, Nebraska, Texas Tech, Ole Miss, and there were some others. I mean, he had some nice early offers, and then honestly, Randy, this little bit smaller class on the defensive side, rounding it out at safety was Braden Graves. He's out of Texas. We have him right on the border, as close as you can be to being a 4-star recruit. He's about the highest 3-star recruit you can be. And I mean, he had local guys, SMU, TCU, Texas Tech were all over him. Utah offered him. And again, he committed early to KU. So there were some good guys that had a lot going on that, that had options, and KU was able to close some of these guys out early, and a couple of them, closed them out on their official visits.
I really love the sound of this group at this point. Like one of the things that you said, and it stands out to me, these guys all had other suitors, and they weren't just like, I know people talk about on the boards now and then they'll say, well, it's not like the old days when we were trying to beat out Bowling Green or Colorado State for kids. And it's a whole different world, obviously, with recruiting. But when you look at the names that were in pursuit, that were after, and were legitimately on some of these guys, actually most of these guys, it tells you the quality athlete that they're looking at right now. And that's fantastic. That's a tribute to the work that Lance Leipold and his staff have done. We are inching closer to the start of fall camp, and I'm sure everybody will agree that's listening, it cannot get here soon enough. And this time of year, there's nobody who can get us caught up on how things have been going so far through summer workouts than our man, Matt Gildersleeve. Sleeve talked with John on the studio line earlier today about the strength and conditioning program, and with the numbers guys have been putting up, things have obviously gone well.
We are joined by Matt Gildersleeve, the Director of Sports Performance for the KU football program. Coach, how you doing?
Outstanding, north of outstanding. If Kansas was outstanding, I'd be up in Canada somewhere.
That's good. You and I have gotten to talk through the years, and this calendar has changed so much over the last 5 to 10 years. I mean, I remember back when coaches had a football camp in like the first week of June, and then they were gone, right? I mean, they're on vacation until the end of July. And, I'm curious. I know some of the coaches are finally getting a chance to get out of the office. When do you guys and the players get a break?
Yeah, so it is definitely ever changing, but it's May for us, and my schedule is the players' schedule. So when the players are here, I'm here. When the players are gone, we're away with some family time. So the players had, depending on their exam schedule, they had 2 or 3 weeks off in May, which is when my family and I, we go over to visit my wife in Spain, her family in Spain, and then the guys get a week off now. So today was their first day off. We'll report back July 6th, so about a full week. We actually trained yesterday on Sunday, and then we'll head up to Michigan here to visit my folks and spend some time with them here for the week. So it's definitely a different schedule than the coaches, but you know what June is nowadays. It's I was telling my staff yesterday as we kind of go on break, when we get back here in July, that seems like a vacation because compared to June, there's no recruiting, there's no camps. It's the stuff that we love to do. It's training the guys. It's camp. It's the day-to-day training stuff, and then that's really it. So July seems like such a deload compared to even what June is nowadays. And obviously all that stuff is necessary, and you love having the young guys on campus and the recruiting and the camps and seeing the vibrant energy that brings. But it's definitely nice in July to be able to really focus on our team and then have a little bit of afternoon time with your family and kind of recharge a little before August.
Sure. I remember, Matt, there was a time where late May was such an exciting time on our message board and with all of our KU fans because that's when the players were reporting, right? And you'd see photos of like 20 guys coming on campus and new players. But now that time was January because there were over 40 new players that reported in January, and it's just a small group of guys now that came in the summer. How does that change your approach?
I tell you that's my favorite part of this new day and age of college football for sure is you really get to forge a team, and it's kind of an eerie thing, but you don't realize it till you're not doing it, right? But you build this team and this chemistry and this camaraderie, and you feel like you really understand the identity of your team, and then all of a sudden June you get 30-some new guys, and it's a huge dynamic change-up, right? And you've got to account for those things. You just kind of figure it out because you're doing it, but now, when you have the bulk of your team and you just have a few kind of straggling freshmen coming in June, your identity is established and you can really build culturally. And at the same time, from a physical standpoint, you know what you got, right? You're not really restarting with a third new of your roster. And so I think that's one of the biggest benefits to this current calendar. At least what I've really enjoyed the most is having that continuity. And going on May break and knowing your roster, what it's going to look like when you come back in June.
All right, so you guys had a lot of newcomers come in January, and I know you guys have really built a player-led program type thing. And are you seeing guys step up to lead, whether it's a new guy coming into the program or a returning one? Are you happy with what you're seeing from there?
Yeah, I think the unique, and I was thinking about the other day, that the unique difference, we have a lot of leaders on this team. And we have a pretty big leadership council this year. We have 16 guys on it, which is honestly a lot more than we typically like to have, because what you see when you have that many guys is it's an issue because when you have 16 guys responsible for something, they all kind of think the other guy's going to do it, and nobody ends up doing it. And what you end up having is you have a bunch of guys that don't really truly lead. And the most exciting thing about this group is there's definitely different levels of leaders within that leadership council, but they all want to lead, and you see them and hear them all doing the action of leading. But there are some guys that have really, really stepped forward, and and really become what I call alpha leaders and kind of peak leadership roles. But Calvin Clements is a guy, local guy, was pretty quiet coming on campus. Last year kind of stepped into a leadership role, but wasn't very confident in it. Even this winter, you kind of see him learn. And this summer, it is like shot out of a cannon. This guy is running the team. Whether it be extra work, demanding the standard, constantly being vocal, but like you're seeing a part of Calvin that you've never seen before. That's extremely exciting. Trey Layton, who kind of came off of the season and had a slow winter, kind of start getting his body right, kind of feeling out the new guys, has been an absolute pleasant surprise in so many ways, but he's been on fire. And we need a guy from that position to really be a demanding vocal leader, and he has really stepped into that role, which I don't know that we were expecting. Blake Harrell built some really good leadership momentum in the winter and has been just continuing with that, which honestly, that wasn't Blake's MO previously in the program. And so seeing him willing to do that, and you can put a guy in a leadership role and make him lead, but I'll tell you what, it never works. Leadership is so challenging, and if a guy doesn't want to do it on his own, you're never going to have success with that young man. And to see Blake step into that role has been tremendous. And then you have some new guys, right? Quincy Davis has come in, and the first guy I put him in contact with was Rich Miller, because they remind me so much of each other. And Rich is such a mentor. Rich still to this day, he's on the phone with Quincy, and he's kind of walked him through his process of what it was like for him coming here from Buffalo and that transition, because Quincy, like Rich, came from New Mexico State, right, where it's a lower level school. He's coming up into the big league, like all that kind of mindset mentality. And Rich has done a great job mentoring him, and Quincy has been tremendous as well. So yeah, a lot of the leadership part might be what I'm most excited about this team right now. And I think really in the last 4 weeks that has matriculated really well throughout the program.
Okay, we can't do an interview with Matt Gildersleeve. We're talking about the fastest players on the team. So give us a preview of maybe a group or a handful of guys you think are racing to stake claim to that title.
Yeah, we certainly have risen the ceiling, John, quite significantly. And just to give an example, like when you look at last year's team, we had 5 guys that could run over 22 miles an hour. As it stands today, we have 11 guys.
Wow.
Last year's team, we had 14 guys that could run between 21 and 21.99, right? We have 28 right now. So you have all those guys knocking on the door of 22. So you're talking about your ceiling, and obviously, fortunately, those are a lot of guys that are going to be playing ball for us. So you're going to see a lot more team speed out there on the field this year. A guy that I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, and he's had his growing pains, just figuring out the culture and the standard and the program and just learning the ways. But Christian Pritchett coming in here, kind of figuring out how we do things, a slower start, which a lot of guys have, which is no problem. But man, he has caught fire these last few weeks. And then just on Tuesday, he hit 22.57, which is the third fastest we've ever had here. And I mean, he wasn't sniffing that in the winter. And so to see some of these guys that are coming up and really hitting some of these speeds. But I'll tell you what, John, is what's been honestly a little surprising, and I always knew Isaiah Marshall was extremely explosive. But, he ran a 1.28 10-yard split. He's over 40 inches on the vertical jump. He's knocking on the door at 22 miles an hour. I mean, when you look at all of his metrics, by the end of this summer, he will be one of the most explosive athletes we've had here since we've been here, period. And that's a quarterback, right? And so I knew that he was explosive. I got to be honest, I'm not sure I ever thought he'd quite get to this level of power, of raw power. So he's been super exciting as of late. So there's a lot of guys jumping off the Richter scale here. Jalen Todd almost clipped 23, which is a PR this week, but all was 22.77. So he's getting close to that 23 mile an hour range, which Emmanuel Henderson, Quentin Skinner, Jason Bean are the 3 guys that have ever hit that before. So yeah, a lot of really, really exciting things. I think when you look at our team size, our team strength, we have an older football team, right? We did that intentionally in the portal. We went and got bigger, and to see that. But I mean, we did our heavy squat on Friday here, and for our bigs, our average squat went up over 55 pounds for each guy in the last 8 weeks. And so really, really exciting things there. But as you know, you don't play football in a weight room. You play on a football field. So that's where July hits, and that's where July becomes a lot different. we're no longer driving KPIs in the month of July, key performance indicators. I'm honestly not worried about miles per hour and those things in July. Now what we're worried about is getting them ready to play football. And so you see training shift a ton in July to where it is a ton of time out on the field. It becomes more of, I don't want to say maintenance loads because that's not true, but more in-season, maintain plus type strength speed because you're using so much of the energy time out on the field, getting them ready for all the accelerations and decelerations and high-speed distance and all these metrics that we need to make sure we're good so we're healthy and be able, we can sustain, 12-plus games in the regular season. So training kind of shifts, and this is kind of where I don't want to say close the books, but close the books on really driving KPIs and really thinking about, hey, we got to pour all this stimulus into this speed bucket and strength bucket. Now it becomes more, we got to pour all that stimulus into getting these guys ready to play football because that's where games are won. So really pleased where we're at right now, really excited and excited for July to see it all come together now because that's what happens. July is where the magic happens, and then you know what August is. So it's coming in a hurry, but we're fired up about it.
That's the good info. Our fans always love hearing you talk about the miles per hour and who the guys on the leaderboard might be. I wanted to end it with this question. It's about facilities, and it's something that I don't know that gets brought up enough. But I mean, you got a new stadium, you got a new remodeled strength and conditioning area, you got new dining for the players. And I know you meet with recruits because I hear a lot of the recruits when I interview them. They say, "Hey, one of the things I really like was talking to Matt Gildersleeve." What do you hear from the recruits when it comes to the new stadium and the facilities and the weight room and how much that factors in?
Yeah, I think it's a mixed bag to a degree. I think that at the end of the day, we have unbelievable facilities. But I think we talked about this before, John. Is it's not just the fact that we have them, it's what it represents. So yes, you get to use them every day, but it represents an investment of a bigger picture from administration, from the state, from the university. To me, that's really what the recruits see the parents see. If you walk in, you know our athletic director is behind the program. Our president is behind the program. You don't invest this kind of money into a program if it's not. And so to me, yes, the facilities and the day-to-day life and living in these is tremendous. We've done a ton of more recruiting where, hey, like you're going to go and you're going to eat with Chef Mike and you're going to experience what our kids eat every day. That's a huge, huge bonus. But once again, the fact that we have our own team chef, look, what does that mean from an investment standpoint of what our administration is willing to do, what our head football coach is willing to fight for to create this environment for his athletes? To me, it's those subliminal messages that you hear more about, especially probably from the parents and maybe the older transfers. But that to me, that rings, man. That is just absolutely critical of, yes, man, it's so cool to have these facilities every day. And I literally have to pinch myself when I walk in here every day. And that'll never change for me, man. This is being a D3 guy coming up in the MAC for 9 years. People say I'm living the dream. Like, John, I literally used to dream about this. Like, that is not a joke. I would have dreams about being able to have these kind of resources and facilities and staff and, I mean, you name it. But to know that you have that backing, what a recruiting tool is that, to show the investment of our administration, president, head coach, you name it. It's tremendous, John. It's an exciting time, and man, I'm blessed. I'm lucky to be here. We love it. I love it, and we're looking forward to having a great season, giving it everything we got.
As always, great stuff from Matt Gildersleeve. Coach, I really want to thank you for coming on, all the great information. I know our fans it seems like every January and every June always look forward to hearing from you. So thanks for joining us on the Inside Slant podcast.
Yeah, no, hey, thank you, John, and to all our fans, thank you for your guys' support and keep on sticking in there with us. We appreciate you guys more than you know. You guys have a great 4th of July break, and we'll talk to you soon, John.
As always, Matt Gildersleeve delivers. Tons of great insight from the man leading the Jayhawks S&C program. You got to admit, those are some impressive numbers there, Kirby, with players making gains like we really haven't seen since Lance Leipold arrived in Lawrence.
Well, Randy, listen, you can talk about, pump me up stories, and you can talk about the feel good off season stuff, which everybody's doing right now in their programs. But I mean, you just heard Gildersleeve. He backed it up with facts. I mean, they're bigger, they're stronger.
He brought data.
They're faster. I mean, you can argue now. Now listen, so this was brought up on the message board. Okay, is it because of having portal guys, right? Because they loaded up on more experienced guys. They loaded up with guys who've played Division I football. They've got some guys who are proven at the D1 level. So maybe having some older guys brings in some more speed, brings in some more strength, right? So you're testing juniors and seniors and maybe not as many freshmen and sophomores. But the fact is that can't be argued is he just said the numbers have improved in some area twofold. So that was impressive. I liked hearing him talk about Christian Pritchett, a guy who, early on was maybe trying to figure out the culture. And he's one of the guys in my position previews that I'm going to have that I've heard has really looked good. And he's going to be a guy that sees the field. You heard him talk about Isaiah Marshall. I mean, he's got some crazy numbers, and Jalen Todd and his speed. And you talked about leadership. He talked about Calvin Clemens and Lathan and Blake Harold. It's good to hear, okay, in a program, Randy, where you're there are some. Look at Oklahoma State. They got 80 new guys coming in on scholarship with a new coaching staff. All right. Well, KU had 40 something guys report in January, and Gildersleeve talked about working with all those guys, mixing them in the winter when they arrive. So you've got to have new leadership every year. It seems like who steps up, and I thought it was interesting some of the names that Gildersleeve threw out. On that. And hey, one of the things that I don't think gets brought up enough that Gildersleeve touched on is the facilities. Okay, you've got a new stadium, you've got new strength room, you've got the newest technology. I've been in the players' dining area. I mean, it is really cool over on the west side. And Gildersleeve talked about Chef Mike. I mean, the players have their own chef who customs their meals. I mean, that is stuff that I know that we're into an age now where it comes down to money. The player wants X amount, and if you can get him X amount, you're probably going to get him. But there still are some things that play into recruiting, Randy, because if school over here is offering the same amount of money as a school over here, now it starts to come down to relationships. Do you like the culture of a program? What are the facilities like? What are the added bonuses? And I think the facilities that KU has are right up there with about anybody they're competing against for recruits. And then you throw in something like having your chef. I mean, that's a big deal. So if you've ever been to a KU practice, okay, I mean, I know a lot of people don't get to go to them. The energy that Gildersleeve brings to a KU football practice is some of the best. And I've seen I've seen a lot of strength guys over the years, but what he does is tremendous. So, and he ended it right there. You heard him. He said, we're to the point now where testing and numbers are great and we've seen some increases, but it's about time for that to start translating onto the football field. And he did say they're going to have some of the best team speed in terms of numbers they've had in some time. So we're getting there, Randy. Fall camp's around the corner.
I cannot wait. And, you kind of alluded to it. Kirby said we're going to have, it's not too far off that we're going to get into his famous fall camp preview. And in our next edition of the podcast, we are going to take the roster. We're going to go position by position. I'm going to give Kirby, I might give him more than one lightning round just to make sure that I got him on his toes and ready for the start of practice. I mean, if he's going to have somebody like Gildersleeve barking at him, I got to make sure that Kirby's ready. That will do it for another edition of the Inside Slant podcast from jayhawkslant.com. You have heard everything you need to get you primed and ready, obviously, for the weeks we will wait for the start of fall camp. But if nothing else, to get you geared up for a great holiday weekend for July 4th. For my man John Kirby, I'm Randy Withers. You've been listening to the Inside Slant podcast from jayhawkslant.com. We will talk with you again soon.
This has been a podcast from jayhawkslant.com.